Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's such an honor to be here with so many amazing people from so far away from me. Can I ask you to wave at me with your right hand? I'm waving to Australia, and then I'm waving with my left hand to Spain, and Helen's there in the UK, and I'm waving to both hands with Seema, and I'm waving over here to this side, and I'm waving over to this side to Cassiana in Argentina. I mean, Brazil. Oh my gosh, what an amazing moment. So I was asked by Karen to give a bit of a teaser about what my presentation at the conference will be. So I first wanted to just introduce myself and say a bit about what I've been up to. And this is such a great audience to be able to do this because everyone here loves Violet's work. So this is where I work in Portland, Oregon, and I teach at Lewis and Clark College. And these are some of my students in a counseling, therapy, and school psychology department. They're all learning how to become therapists mostly, or counselors or school psychologists working with children. I also work at a middle school, and Portland isn't known as being very diverse, but at this middle school, there are 63 languages spoken. So we're really benefiting from learning from the complexity of the different cultures, Somali, Burmese, from Mexico, from Russia, the Ukraine. We have this amazing complexity within certain neighborhoods. So we run counseling groups with children in the school. My students, my graduate students actually run the groups. Here they're reading a book that I actually wrote with a friend of mine called The Bear Inside. So we look at how to help kids have a healthy sense of themselves, as Violet talks about, as well as a healthy sense of connection to others and contact. And we do this in all kinds of places like the library, corners of the school, a lot of expressive arts work. And this last year, we've had to do it online. So this may look familiar to many of you. This is what a counseling group looks like on Zoom. So we've had, this amazing experience of working with children without their screens on, for example, but then the intimacy of the chat feature and what they will say in very small snippets. What Violet often talks about is, the child comes out and makes contact with us and then recedes. And that's been very visible on Zoom in particular. So we've tried to do a lot of activities because of the COVID restrictions staring at screens. So I'm going to invite you all right now to do the camel pose, or to at least just reach up like this and stretch backwards. Oh, and not look at the screen for a minute. Just reach up and stretch backwards. And then we can try the gorilla pose, which is to reach down and touch our feet. I'm disappearing. Let your back and your spine relax just a little bit. Notice the curvature. Just an opportunity to move a little bit. And this is one of my favorites. So this one I'm going to stop sharing just because it's so fun to watch this happen. But this is the lion pose. So can I see you put your paws up like this and to give a little bit of a growl. And on the count of 3, we'll take a deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, inhale. And when we let it out, we roar. We have to do that one again. And this time we got to stick our tongue out when we roar. So 1, 2, 3, inhale. Oh my God, that is so fun to see. I gotta say, and I think I have the courage to do that because Violet encouraged me to feel confident about aggressive energy and what we're supposed to do with aggressive energy, right? That there's a role for it. This is a picture of in Mexico, a group I worked with working with aggressive energy work. And I'm going to say more about this in just a moment. But I wanted to move on and say how I met Violet originally, which was through these summer trainings. This is one of my favorite photographs of Violet. She's got her game face on in that picture. So she's willing to play and make a fool of herself and become embodied and use materials, like in this case, musical instruments. And you can see the folks sitting around behind her kind of stunned that she's out there, using shakers and rattles and making noise, right? So she was really good in these trainings at using her aggressive energy. And Seema actually just chatted in this meeting and asked me about Violet doing puppet shows. And I happen to have this picture of her doing puppet shows with her, again, with the summer trainings. And I was doing research of her work at this time because I was so amazed by the fact that she had this book that was written in 15 languages. It wasn't in 15 at that point, but my question was, what is she doing that's so helpful to so many people in so many different places? I wanted to understand that. And of course, she has Hidden Treasure out in a number of languages. The Italian version just came out, that lovely book cover, just in the last few months. And so I ended up fortunately being able to write about her work also. And because Violet's so famous, my book is also in different languages too, which I'm very grateful for. And I tried to write about what I learned from her about how to teach this work. And because of that, I got to go to South Africa with Violet in 2000. We were just reminiscing about that recently and what an amazing trip that was. And because of her work, I get to teach at different colleges here in the Northwest. This is in Idaho. This is actually in Australia, in Brisbane. This is in British Columbia, Vancouver, and this is in Mexico. But the main place, I have been teaching, and I've been teaching for 23 years at Lewis and Clark College, and this is doing sand tray work here. And this is something I haven't shared before, but I think it's important to note that I've taught this class 21 times. I developed this class based on Violet's work. I've called it different things over time. And I'm a pretty good teacher, but when I teach Violet's work, I'm a really good teacher. And for 16 years, the overall course evaluation for that course is 4.9 out of 5 points. And I get high evaluations in the 4s or whatever, but Violet's work is always seen as the most valuable stuff I teach. And I'm so thankful to be able to have that course. So I've been teaching it for a number of years, as I mentioned. I've also written some book chapters about her work. And I list these because I want them to become more available. And if you're interested in any of these, I can send you copies of them. So I've written 4 book chapters based on Violet's work. And this is something, even putting together this talk, I hadn't really realized. So I've been writing about Violet's work for 20 years. So my first article came out, these are journal articles, came out in 1999. My most recent one was just last year or the year before. And these are all peer-reviewed journal articles about Violet's work that I would also be happy to share with you. So please do email me if you're interested in any of those. I also have put together a series of talks on YouTube. If you Google Play Becomes, or if you look up Play Becomes Real and Mortola, you'll see a series of lectures that are based on that class that I teach. And it's been exciting to watch people from around the world view those. Unfortunately, they're in English at this point, and I really do appreciate all of you being able to receive this information in English at this point. And as I mentioned, I wrote this children's book called The Bear Inside with this colleague of mine, and this is about aggressive energy. And I also wrote this book called BAM, Boys Advocacy and Mentoring. So a specific sort of subpopulation I've done a lot of work with is boys and men. And again, aggressive energy has been really helpful in that work. And I just want to spend 2 minutes sharing how I think that work has been important based on a Gestalt principle of contact, right? So most of us know the squiggle. We're in a state of withdrawal, we're not thirsty. Then we have this sensation of, oh, my mouth is dry, an awareness, oh, I need to mobilize and find some water. Oh, look, here's some. I take action. I make contact with the water. It integrates into my system. I'm no longer thirsty. And so I go back into a state of repose, right? That's a very, helpful concept. And Violet, I think, really helped me ground this idea of contact. Ideal contact is having all of yourself present, your senses, your body, your emotions, and your intellect. So contact is simply this ability to be with ourselves and with others in a way that is flexible and adaptive. So I did this drawing, and this relates to work with boys in particular, because as you can see, I've sort of modified, it's the dolphin, right? Who's got healthy contact and withdrawal. And the dolphin jumps out of the water and meets the culture, the environment, the family, the physical. So we reach out into the world and we make contact. And then we go back into our senses, body, feelings, and intellect, the water of our experience. And the healthy ability to maintain both of those, that flexibility, is what healthy contact is about, right? Like the dolphin skimming the surface and leaping and going back in. That's the flexible, healthy contact across the contact boundary. But when we have difficulties with contact, and Violet would say kids come into therapy because of issues with contact with themselves or with others, right? And the DSM has described, for example, if we have contact disorders in terms of contact with others, those can be seen and labeled in the DSM as externalizing disorders, right? So we have ADHD, ODD, aggression, social problems, drug abuse. Those are issues of being under-regulated. Like the dolphin is out of the water too much. And then there's issues of being overly regulated, internalizing. If we're in the water too much, we've got somatization, anxiety, depression, thought disorders, eating disorders. Those are issues of being over-regulated. So Violet was really helpful to me in teaching that we're really helping kids learn how to navigate and do this pulse of contact. And my students are often really surprised because I'm willing to talk about this, but boys on average struggle with externalizing disorders, and girls on average struggle with internalizing disorders. And there's both social reasons for that, and I think there's biological issues with that. But I think it's important when we're working with boys in particular that we understand that the issues many of them do struggle with internalizing anxiety, depression, but many of the problems we see with boys have to do with this dolphin out of the water too far, too often, too over the boundary, right? So we have to help them regulate that energy. And this is what I'm so excited to be able to talk with Patrick White, who's going to be the co-presenter at the conference. And one thing we're going to be talking about is what Violet would refer to as aggressive energy. and how to work with aggressive energy with boys, because as she said, Violet, we are always using aggressive energy, like when I'm biting an apple. Otherwise, we would never get our needs met. And she used to do this funny thing where she would hold up an apple and pretend like she couldn't bite it. And she'd say, if I don't bite it, I just go, oh, right? Like we actually do need our aggressive energy, and we need to use it to enact ourselves in the world and get our needs met, but we need to regulate that sense of aggressive energy. So when we do this, and I love this picture actually of Violet teaching Blake how to deal with his angry feelings, right? And my students still are like shocked that Violet will be so assertive in her, you know, teaching of when you're angry, you go like this, bang, 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 bang. But it's so helpful, because how else are they going to learn to regulate this energy that they have, especially boys that we work with, if we don't show them and give them practice. So Patrick and I are going to do this talk called Working with Boys and Men using the Oaklander approach to help reclaim disowned parts of the self. And I am so excited to get to work with Patrick, because Patrick has years and years of experience working with boys and men. And Patrick, would you mind just saying a bit about what our presentation outline might consist of?
Sure, absolutely. Am I unmuted or can
Yes,
you?
you are.
I'm unmuted. Great. I'm excited to do this with you, Peter. It's really exciting to me. I think part of it comes from being a male therapist, which there are not a huge amount of male therapists, even here in Los Angeles, who work with kids. So probably other male therapists can recognize that an overwhelming amount of referrals that we get tend to be boys. Oftentimes parents looking for men to work with their boys. Some of the things that we'll be talking about during our presentation will begin with an experiential exercise, focusing in on some aspect of what it's like for us to work with boys, whether it's a boy that we know, whether it's a boy we have in therapy, or some aspect of what emotional stuff comes up for us when we work with boys as opposed to girls. We'll be talking about what Peter has already referenced really well, is this difference between externalizing behaviors and internalizing, and how there are some unique aspects to externalizing behavior with boys. I also have done a lot of work with school systems, as Peter is very involved with school systems, and how oftentimes school systems and the mental health system does label emotional disturbance for boys in more ways that are, as Peter talks about, the externalizing aspects, more aggressive behavior, and there'll be some focus on that. And the parts of the disowned parts of self with boys, Peter and I will be talking about. And in particular, I do a fair amount of work with gay boys. And so I want to take some attention to the process of disowned parts of the male boy experience across the sexual orientation spectrum. The disowned parts of boys who identify as gay, and issues of shame and conformity. Then we'll be doing some discussion, comments, and open dialogue around all of the issues of working with boys. So it's an exciting presentation, I think. I'm excited to do it with Peter. Peter has as you're getting a little preview, he has an abundance of really good pulling together of the research and the data that we know about the difference in working with boys and girls. And as he mentioned, some of that biological, some of that social and cultural. So I think it should be interesting. So that's a little bit of what we'll be doing.
And Patrick will be contributing cases that he will be referring to, like this one, which I won't say anything about because Patrick will in a few weeks. And so the rich, 30-year, is that how many years, Patrick, you've been in practice?
Oh, actually about 36, I realized.
36 years of practice, and the depth of cases and experiences that he's going to bring is something that I'm so grateful um, to work with Patrick in this presentation, and we're thinking of other possible avenues. So thank you, Patrick, and thank you, Karen. I'm also doing a second presentation, which I won't say anything about now, but I'm really interested in how Violet's work helps us make contact with ourself. And I've been doing this research on the hemispheres of the brain and how Violet's work seems to help us access a whole side of our brain that we don't normally get to when we're just talking. And it's that magical moment that happens with Violet's work where suddenly somebody is saying something that is new to them and fresh and inspiring, and where did that come from? So that's going to be the second presentation. So I hope to see you all on June 4th through 6th at the conference. And Karen, thank you once again for inviting me. And Violet, thank you for your inspiration. Namaste.
Thanks, Peter. Open invitation anytime for that new presentation. We're happy to preview it here on this call, I know. And it looks like there's a lot of interest in getting your articles and chapters, and to the extent that I can share it, I'm happy to do so with the mailing list here. So just let me know how that can work. But thank you so much for that.